What's up, meta nerds? This video is all about the Slave 2, and I will also go over the little information that exists on the Slave 3 and the Slave 4, all ships that were used by Boba Fett. The Slave 2 was Fett's Pursuer-class enforcement ship that was manufactured by Mandel Motors, a Mandalorian-run company that also produced the Keldabe-class battleship. Fresh out of the factory, a Pursuer-class cost 200,000 credits, about the cost of 3 TIE fighters, but Boba modified it to the point that it was worth an estimated 1.5 million credits. For reference, that's about twice the cost of the Slave 1. At a length of 30.1 meters, or 98 feet, it was about as long as a Y-Wing plus a TIE fighter, and at a width of 11.5 meters, or 38 feet, it was about 3 huts across, while at a height of 10.6 meters, or 35 feet, it was an Ewok taller than an AT-ST. With a top speed of 1,000 kilometers per hour, or 621 miles per hour, it was as fast as the Slave 1 and the Y-Wing, but slower than an IG-2000. Its hyperdrive was slower than its predecessor, but the Class 1 was still faster than an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. For defense, it had incredibly powerful shield generators and sensor jamming equipment, while for offense, it had 2 blaster cannons, an ion cannon turret, tractor beam, and proton torpedo launcher at the rear, which was a perfect way to eliminate those quicker ships as they tried to catch up to the Slave 2. One of the most important differences was the 65 metric ton capacity, a weight greater than 16 banthas, which allowed Boba to store 3 months of consumables, as well as all of his regular cargo. If we take a look inside of this ship, we can see that there are 3 decks, with the bridge up top, and the lift tube that connected each level located right here. The middle deck contained a small storage area, followed by the kitchen, and then by Fett's personal quarters. Going down, we see the airlock, followed by the 5 holding cells, and the large cargo bay. And this support strut and stabilizing brace connected to the maneuvering thruster cluster, which contained a series of ion thrusters which gave the ship finer controls when used in concert with the 2 main ion engines. The history of this ship has it starting out as a police patrol craft that was used on Mandalore and Mandalorian-controlled territories. Fett was able to purchase one, and then went about installing all sorts of counter-theft measures and turned the interior of these cells into their own little high-security prisons, with some reports claiming that they had molecularly reinforced walls, gravity restraints, and force fields. These were particularly important when you consider that these cells needed to contain a Wookiee, as Fett was determined to get revenge on Han Solo for what happened at the Great Pit of Carkoon. Whereas the ubiquity of the YT-1300 helped to keep Han under the radar, the Slave 1 was too unique, and so that's why Fett settled on the less flashy Pursuer class. After some time, he was able to track down Solo, and finally sprung his trap on Nar Shaddaa. The Force willed that Solo would escape, and the pursuit that followed brought the pair to the planet Biss, where Han was able to use his Rebel Alliance connections to get them to raise the planetary shields, just as the Slave 2 was about to enter atmosphere, causing Fett to smash into it and break off the stabilizing wing, only just barely surviving due to his ship's own military-grade shields. After this event, Fett decided he would retire the Slave 2, and he moved on to the Slave 3, whose only information I could find was simply that it exists, but after this was destroyed or abandoned, he moved on to the Slave 4. The Slave 4 was built by Kuat Drive Yards, and was an AIAT gunship, which was the exact same class as Jaster's Legacy, the original ship that was used by Jango Fett. Boba would use this ship for many years, until the year 21 ABY, when after mourning the death of his close friend, Fen Shaisa, he decided to abandon this ship on the planet Shogun. And the last we know of this long line of Fett's ships is that the Slave 4 was later discovered by Island Vale, who was actually Boba's daughter. So that's it for the Slave 2, 3, and 4. But most important of all, remember, even Boba couldn't beat the original, and the Force will be with you, always.